Hello everyone, and welcome to the React Native Show podcast, which today we are recording from our new podcast office in our Wrocław Callstack offices. In this episode, I'm Łukasz, I'm going to be your host, and with me today is Michał, our head of technology, and Maciej, who is our senior software developer / expert at Callstack. We are going to discuss Reassure, which is an open source tool created here at Callstack for writing performance regression tests. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Pretty much.
So let's jump into introductions. You probably know me. I'm host at podcast here, so you can find out other episodes that I did on our Callstack engineer channels on YouTube in other places that you listen to our podcast. With me today, like I said, Michał, head of technology. Hello, Michał.
Hey, I'm Michał, head of technology, working with R&D and open source at Callstack here. And I'm often a guest of the Coffee Talk podcast with Łukasz here.
Yeah. Great to have you here today. And another guest that we have is Maciej. Maciej, who are you? What do you do at Callstack?
Hi, I'm Maciej. So I'm expert here at Callstack. My job here is to assist in more complex technical projects, develop non-standard solutions, and advise our client. So I've got a couple of years of experience with React and React Native, and I'm also one of the maintainers of React Native testing library, and now Reassure.
Yeah, so let's jump straight into it. Before we record this episode, I didn't read almost anything. As much as I could, I resisted the urge to read the documentation for Reassure so that I can hear about it firsthand from you, the creator, and you, the co-creator. I guess.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, guys, what is Reassure in few broad sentences, elevator pitch for Reassure?
Okay. So Reassure is a rapid feedback performance monitoring tool for your code, both React Native and soon to be released also React Web.
Okay. And what it does for me? Can I use it to increase the performance of my React Native application?
You can use it, but the primary use case would be that you would write various test scenarios for the key parts of your application. And then on each PR submission, all of these tests will be rerun automatically, and Reassure will verify and inform you whether the performance has stayed the same, or maybe there's some kind of degradation or improvement.
Hopefully improvement. Let's stick to that. Let's stick to the happy path. So yeah, thanks for that. Maybe we can start then talking in details about how the Reassure open source library came about. How did you start it?
Okay, so I was working with my colleagues on a performance optimization project for Entain. They have a suite of sports betting application, and this application have fairly complex user interface. So they came to us to help them improve the performance, especially on older Android devices, the typical suspect.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they've already done some serious performance optimization, but that wasn't enough. They require more help. So what we've analyzed the application with various tools. We found some instances where, for example, memoization was broken. It was there, but it wasn't working perfectly. So the story was that they've done the hard work, but after some time, they introduced some new features which broke memoization, and it wasn't very obvious because spotting, logical errors in PRs is difficult, and spotting performance problems is
it's even more difficult,
even harder.
So what you usually do is you run the performance investigation, you find the issues, errors, you fix them, you optimize the application, and then someone else comes and breaks the optimization that you did.
Of course, they don't do it intentionally.
No,
It just happens.
Yeah, but it's very hard to spot. So you have a component, it has like 10 props, everything works fine, but then you introduce 11th prop, and suddenly all of the memorization you have breaks, and you are not aware of that.
Sorry, I have this meme in my head about the guy who rides a bicycle, and he stick in his wheel.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's,
we used that meme in a presentation for UpJS.
Oh
year.
yeah. So
You're sure you haven't seen it?
No, I did. I was on the UpJS conference, and Michał was presenting the Reassure at UpJS. It wasn't open sourced yet at that time, but it is right now, right?
Yeah.
So what is the discussion with the Entain, with the client, about the solution that you found and how to make it better? Why is it better by open sourcing it?
Okay, so maybe we'll start with a little bit more context of that. So we first started with this idea that we've done the performance optimization for you, but we're kind of concerned that in 6 months, 12 months down the road, the performance will be degraded because it's like hard to monitor it. And so we suggested some kind of monitoring of that, and we've done research. We didn't find any kind of ready-made solution. It's always better to find some working solutions and to adapt it. It's much, much faster, much cheaper. But there wasn't anything that was suitable. So we floated the idea, maybe we will build something like that. But we didn't know whether to work. It was just a concept, which tools to use, whether to use end-to-end test or React Native testing library, etc. So there were, it seems like we persuaded them, and they were willing enough to allow us to do the POC, which I did, and the results were very promising. We discovered that you can use React Native testing library, React Profiler, and plug it together and have some meaningful results, which was super cool because it gave us like confidence that we can build this tool. So the next step was building in-house tool for Entain, which worked, is being used right now, and it's deployed. And then we have this conversation side of Callstack that, hey, this is a pretty useful idea. This is a problem that many applications have, but there is no ready-made solution. So maybe, just maybe, we could make an open source library from that.
Yeah. And so...
A few months later?
Yeah, I was going to ask, how long is the process from POC to having an in-house solution to then generalize it and open source it?
Okay, so there are like two parts. One is like the technical part, which I'm more confident describing because, you have to write documentation, you have to generalize it, you have to generally produce more product-like feature. So if you're building something in-house, you build it with like minimal effort to just get the stuff working for the client because they're interested in like reaping the benefits. But if you build an open source library, you have to solve more general problem and explain it to all of your potential users. So there is a lot more like polishing of the product, writing documentation, and also I think marketing. Michał.
I'm not from marketing.
But
you're pretty good at it.
He did the marketing for the thing. I was there and I saw him on that stage giving like 30-minute talk about Reassure, the next big thing in performance optimization. So he does marketing pretty well, let me tell you.
Yeah, and he's actually author of the name Reassure. So if I was to name the library, it was called something like React Native Performance Testing.
It was hard.
Something.
It was hard to convince Maciej that Reassure was a good name, but I think it's starting to grow on us. So it seems normal at this time.
Yeah, I've got used to it.
Internally, we used a code name React Native Perf Tool, but this is not a great name for a library.
Well, and I'm already tired of everything for React Native being named React Native something.
Yeah, but there's a reason. There is a reason.
True, but like Maciej said, we want to get that generalized to React word as well. So then it would be React Native and React
or React
Performance.
Perf.
Yeah. somehow I like the short names better. Like Reanimated. It's not React Native Reanimated, it's Reanimated, right?
It is. It is React Native Reanimated.
But you call it Reanimated.
but they use the Reanimated name, and it's way better.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to podcast.
You asked about the timelines, right?
Yeah.
So Maciej, before jumping into the task, he actually asked me to validate the idea. So he had this idea to use the React Profiler because there is an API for that, and hook it into the React Native testing library pipeline somehow. How to run it in specific environments. So we also discussed. I think at the first talk, something that we were challenging were how to get the average time, right?
I will definitely want to hear more about the in-depth technical.
I'm not going any more into details now, promise. Yeah. So we had this 1 hour talk or call to figure out what to do. And Maciej just went with it, and I think 1 or 2 months later, they had a working proof of concept in their code base, and I think it matured for another 1 or 2 months, and around this time, like right after they were done with proof of concept, we asked them, hey, what would it take to open source this library?
Yeah.
And Entain as a client was, I think they were pretty enthusiastic about partnering with us, about making this open source. But the thing is that this was their intellectual property. Because that's how things work. So we would need to cooperate with legal department, and this is when the fun starts. And hopefully, thankfully, I and Maciej didn't have to talk to them directly. We had our account manager that handled the cooperation, and 3 or 4 months later of back and forth on emails, checking the licenses, permissions, and whatnot, we got the confirmation right before the conference. So before showing this library to the broader audience, I wasn't sure whether it will be ready for open source or not, and that was one of the reasons we started with early access idea, because we just didn't have 100% confirmation that at this early June this will be actually possible to open source,
ready to show it to the world. So I'm no business person, not claiming to be, but I guess it's I can see 2 benefits for Entain to open source their intellectual property, like you said, IP. So one is that we constantly talk about them, Entain in this podcast. So that's like a marketing value, I guess, somehow. But from technical perspective, if you have very smart person working on your library inside project in-house, then you have just one smart person working on it, or maybe a team. I'm not saying
a small team.
But then when you open source it and more people start to use it, more big projects start to use it, you can actually have more value from your intellectual property being open source that in-house. So that's my 3 cents about it.
Yeah, I mean, there are many reasons, like pros and cons for open sourcing the libraries.
We're not talking about cons here,
We're not
Michał.
talking about cons. We're saying that the vast majority is in the pro section. So this is like a regular talk we do with our clients, that it just makes sense to do things this way. Ideally starting from open source, but that's not always the case.
Yeah.
It's just that thing. It just happens that developers are solving some problem that is specific to our clients, and then they figure, hey, this is something that could be generalized.
Do you want to talk some more about the process of getting this library done, or should we jump into the technical details? And let me tell our audience that we will have some demo at the end of the show, but beforehand, we'll talk about the more in detail technical aspects, how it works, how can I use it, what's inside it. You shared that inside it is React Native Testing Library.
Oh, it pairs with React.
So more of the process, or we are jumping into the technical details?
I'm a technical person.
Yeah,
so
let's jump.
I can talk about the details now.
Please be my guest. I will ask you a question, how it works.
Okay. So what I will tell you first, what it exactly does and what it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then we'll discuss how it is doing that. So what we are measuring is we are measuring the render performance of your React or React Native components. And what we found, for example, in Entain project, but also in a more general discussion inside Callstack, is that vast majority of performance problems in React Native applications are actually on the JavaScript side. So probably most of them are actually connected to rendering. Only a small proportion of problems is connected to native components and things like that. So we are using testing library, React Native testing library, and you can write as you write your integration test, you can write a test scenario, which kind of mimics a typical user manual tester scenario. So, for example, open this page, input that kind of data, press that button, something should happen, wait for it, then do some other actions. Mm-hmm. So we already have that for testing library for integration tests. I find that this is both very natural to write tests, because you can take just normal scenarios for manual testers and script them elegantly. And this is also very easy to write. I think it's kind of easier than end-to-end test also to set up. So what we are doing here is we are taking this infrastructure of testing library, wrapping everything with React Profiler component, which is gathering render statistics for your component. And we are crunching the data. So what we are getting is we get render times for your components.
One technical question, because I think
we are doing it at least 10 times.
Okay,
two.
yeah. But one technical question, I tried to did that several years ago when the profiler came out. I know this is like a normal React component. It's not available in production though, right? It's not. You have to do something specific to have that component run in production mode.
Yeah, we are actually not running in production mode. So let me explain it in a more context. So when we run your component, we are comparing the performance like before you made the changes, like your main branch or develop, whatever is the stable release, with the changes you want to introduce in your PR. So we are only concerned about like this particular step. Of course, you can do a comparison between very different like branches of your code and things like that, but the primary scenario for you is to monitor the incoming PRs. Like you run unit tests and integration tests to verify that everything is working fine. You also run the Reassure performance test that everything is working fast. And for that use case, it doesn't really matter whether you use production mode or you use debug mode, because if there is a degradation, it will appear in both of these.
Yeah. So you're not concerned about the absolute numbers, but relative to some previous measurement.
Yeah. So this is interesting because what we get from like renderer is we get values in milliseconds, render times. So you might think, oh, that's a number that I can like just talk about in and figure out that 100 milliseconds is a large number or small. It actually is not the case.
Yeah.
Because it is more like, graphic cards benchmarks. You have these graphic cards and you run the benchmark and then the result is 3,000. and you don't know.
Is it good 3,000 or bad?
Is it good?
I don't
Is
know.
it bad?
3,000 mushrooms.
Yeah.
It's
So
3,000 on my machine.
when this number has some meaning is when you look at other graphics cards and their result. If it's better, then you see that, oh, I've got the best like graphic card or whatever, or processor. So we also do the same thing here. Because if you run your tests on your MacBook Pro with M2 or whatever you have there, of course you will have much lower render duration, like 50 milliseconds. But if you run it on your slow CI running on like GitHub Actions, then the result might be 1,000 milliseconds for the same code. So the absolute number is not meaningful. It's not like a number you get from your production users monitoring when you can draw conclusion just from the number.
Yeah.
So here it's important to actually compare it to the previous version of your code. So we speak in relative terms, like 10% improvement, 20% like degradation, things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and because of that, it doesn't really matter if we were running in the production or development environment. It only matters that the environment is the same and the rules are the same and as stable as possible.
Let's talk about that. I know that you did something to Node in order to have the environment stable and to predictable and consistent across the runs of, like you said, 10 runs per test.
Yeah,
twice?
that's the baseline. Yeah. So I'll start maybe. Node.js is or JavaScript runtimes are pretty tricky environments to work with because JavaScript is an interpreted language which has a garbage collector, and it can kick in when you're running tests, and this would make this particular measurement unreliable, for example. So what we're doing is we are passing a expose GC flag to Node.
Which flag?
Expose GC.
Okay.
GC is for garbage collector.
Okay.
And once that's passed to the Node version that is or Node binary that is running your test runner, which is just by default, then you have a global.gc object available, which you can act upon, and you can schedule the garbage collection manually. So we're doing this before every test, so to make sure that it just doesn't kick in.
We also do other similar stuff. For example, we disable just-in-time compilation so that all tests run like in the same conditions, and not the first test run slower and then they get faster.
Yeah, because with JIT, the longer our JavaScript is running, the faster it will get, because V8 will optimize it with Turbofan and other tools on its pipeline. So it would also get unreliable the longer you run your tests. So this is another thing that we need to apply. And there is this JIT-less mode that you can pass to the V8 engine directly through Node. Thankfully, it's possible to pass a flag. There's a couple more flags we pass.
Yeah,
right?
so maybe a quick explanation why we want to run it more than once. So in the basic scenario, we could just run it once for your baseline code and once for your current code. But what we've noticed is that particular single runs tends to get pretty random, I would say, because there is like the machine is doing other stuff. You might be hit by garbage collection and things like that. So for this reason, we by default run
hit by garbage collector.
Hit by garbage collector.
Yeah.
Is this like a new bus factor?
Yeah, I was too focused on what you're saying to actually understand the joke. But yeah.
Okay.
Sure. One question. Sorry to break this line of thought, but one question. How did you end up at 10 though? Why is it not 2 or is it not 99?
Okay. So 10 seems like a reasonable default if you, for example, run it on your local computer. And if your CI environment or the build agent is stable enough, 10 is usually fine. If you have an unstable environment because you are not in full control of it, some other process might be running there, you probably should increase that number to 20 or 50.
Oh, okay. So you can set it up yourself.
Yeah,
10 is just the
Yes.
default. You can pass whatever number you want.
Because this is very much reliant on the environment that you're running and how fast it is. So, for example, if your single render takes less than 1 millisecond, or the whole run takes less than a millisecond, for example, you need to double it or triple or whatever, so to make sure that that you're not in this 1 millisecond time slot, because then the error from the measurement gets to be very close to what you're measuring, so it becomes way more unreliable. So what we can do as a tool, and we will most likely introduce something like a hint mode or suggestions, would be to suggest users to increase the runs number because the test is running too slow, and it may produce a flaky test, for example.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down for the next part of question, which will be what is the future of Reassure. But let's talk about some more configuration modes. How can I, as a user of this library, configure it? Like you said, I can increase or decrease the number of times my tests are running. What else can I do to modify, to customize?
So the most important thing you do as a user of Reassure is to write a proper test scenarios. What I mean by that is that first you need to think, what are the most important parts of my application that I want to monitor in terms of performance. So for example, if you have like a e-commerce app, that could be like browsing products, checkout, and things like that. So probably you don't want to test everything because writing tests is a tedious process. So you want to focus on the things that your users will mostly notice if there is a problem.
Yeah.
Another good point for where to write tests for Reassure is that if you are given a performance problem to solve, you may start by writing a performance test for that. And that way you would actually achieve two things. When you finish your performance optimization, you will know how much you improve the performance. And also for the future, you would have that area of your application monitored.
This feedback loop, when you investigate and you try and you experiment some different ideas how to improve the performance in this particular part of the application, is really, really important, because it's so hard to notice some of the improvements. And your users can use a range of Android, like you said, phones or other products, that the improvement can be much, much widely different than on your simulator on Mac M2, like you said. So yeah.
But if we're talking about real devices, it's like Reassure is only or we imagine it be only a part of your performance testing suite. So you should also check the real user metrics and actually check the percentage of users that, for example, open your app under a certain threshold, right? So because one thing to remember about Reassure, it only takes JavaScript runtime into account. There's nothing related to native or JavaScript to native interfaces. So So it only focuses on this, let's say, business logic or just logic part. And you asked about configuration. So one thing that we allow to configure is the test runner. So we wanted the users of Vitest, for example, to be able to use it instead of Jest. So we can configure the test runner and the arguments that we were passing to it. There is still something that we defer to users, so it's like configurable by them, which is the script that runs on the CI and actually runs your tests on the current branch, then switch to another, like to the main branch of your repository, and run the test again. So or the other way around, actually. Yeah.
You start with baseline.
This is so we have in this script we have some config options, but I don't know if there's anything more to configure really.
So one point I would like to highlight, as you mentioned about the production monitoring, which is really crucial, is that production monitoring is very like delayed experience. You get the feedback very late in the process when it's already in the hands of the users. So,
but it's very real. Right?
Yeah, but it's a true thing. Is the what they experience. So we are not the true thing. We are like a proxy of a true thing, but we are much faster to give you that result.
Yeah,
and we also more granular in these terms that you can monitor it for each PR separately. You don't need to like analyze the whole release.
Yeah. So you might have noticed.
There is one thing. One thing that we
go ahead.
We just merged yesterday, I think. Or today morning.
Sneak peek.
Yeah, you can configure this one tiny important thing, which is the render function that's powering the scenarios that we're running, and so you're able to configure the Reassure to run either with React Native testing library for React Native or React testing library for the web. So so this is another like
this one. So you might have noticed that we are in around 30 minutes of this episode, and I didn't ask you yet about how to use the damn thing. But that will be the next question, because I want to like combine the demo part with how to use it. So we'll try to show the YouTube viewers the live coding made by Maciej, and also try to describe it the best we can for the podcast listeners. But first, let's wrap up the straight podcast part without the demo to talk about the future, about what's to come, what to expect from Reassure in the upcoming weeks or maybe months if you have such plans.
Okay, so we have a couple of plans in our heads now, but we are like still listening to the feedback of our users, so they can certainly influence the direction where we'll be going. Some from things we have at the moment. The first is support for React Web. So actually Reassure does support it. We need to write some more examples for things like create React app, which is which has pretty complicated scripts.
Pretty unconfigurable.
They don't want to work easily with custom setups, but we will figure that out. We also want to support a broad range of CI solutions. So now we do a piggyback trick when we use Danger.js to actually support every CI that Danger is supporting, which is a lot. But we would like to have like direct integration with GitHub Actions, Circle CI, and things like that.
Are we open for external contributors? Maybe we sell some positions or Reassure here. Hey, listeners, if you want to contribute, if you want some more configuration to available.
Please do.
Yeah, if you want the font to be changed, color or something in the
please don't.
CI.
Looks like Hacktoberfest.
No.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's pretty close, right?
go to our GitHub page. You can get in touch with Maciej. You can get in touch with Michał, and figure out what to do. There is a lot to do.
We'll be happy to help. And like one exciting thing that we are planning is to pair with some CI provider to provide an out-of-the-box
Stable CI.
Stable CI. Yeah. So we have something on our radars, and I hope this works. If not, we'll go further. But this is like this would be the game changer for this library, because it would be like very much plug and play with certain CI providers. So if you're CI providers, if you're listening to us, please reach out.
Yeah,
we have a lot of users that will want to use your services.
And he said he wasn't good with marketing. Okay. Is there anything else apart from how to use Reassure in real life that you want to talk about, but I didn't ask you?
Yeah, I think I've got 1 or 2 points. So first of all, it's very easy to start using Reassure if you're already using React Native testing library. It's usually like you take your existing tests. Hopefully they are like covering large parts of your application.
Hopefully
AKA,
you have some.
AKA integration tests, for example, whole screens or maybe whole screen sequences, things like that. So you take that test, strip out every assertion you have because they are not needed. And then you just swap render for measure performance, and you've got your performance test for that particular part
It's
of the
a
app.
copy-paste development.
Yeah. It's slightly more difficult if you don't have integration test. Well, you should have. But if not, then probably the hardest part is actually doing the correct mocking of your applications. Because inside of integration tests, you have to mock some things, for example, network connections. And
or certain native libraries. Like mocking with React Native is super tricky, especially around animations. And as a community, I think we could do better here.
Yeah. So,
ladies and gentlemen, creative of React Native testing library. So you mentioned something that if I have existing integration tests, and I mock things properly, hopefully, and I have the scenario of walking through my screens, why didn't you just drop a line? Okay, so in this integration test, I want to make also a performance measurement. Why don't I do it in the same file? Why do I have to copy it to the next one and strip out assertions?
It would be tricky to configure Jest to understand it, and you would need to configure it in some way to, for example, for the regular test runs, you don't want to mix them with performance because performance tests are running long by default. Like this is the case. They will run as your functional end-to-end tests because they're running the same code for at least 10 times. So you definitely don't want to do it for your integration or unit JavaScript tests. But we want to experiment with some Jest integrations, so you can pair it somehow. But this requires like further research and specifically from the developer experience point of view.
Let's not be afraid of little duplication in code.
Yeah. Good point.
Yeah.
And then I have 2 files. One is called integration test. One is called performance test, and I know where to look for which issue.
And you also you often don't want to test the same things with performance. You want to have some overlap, but you don't need to test edge cases with performance.
Usually the most common scenarios are things you want to test.
Okay.
Happy paths.
Shall we move on to putting Maciej on the spot?
Speaking of happy path,
let's
do it.
Live
coding for us.
Okay.
So, Michał and Maciej, we'll try to do our best to describe what we are doing.
Okay, you're doing this.
Okay. So yeah.
I will help.
No, actually,
Maciej
if Maciej is coding,
Yeah, he's gonna do a good job.
yeah. So this will be an explanation and live showcase of how to use Reassure in your React Native project. As I understand, Maciej has a prepared repository already. He's not gonna write a new to-do app from scratch. Hopefully.
Yeah, I've got something for you.
Okay.
Okay. So we will start with running Reassure on our local machine. So you can run it both on CI, which is like the automatic safety net, but you can also run it locally for even faster feedback. So this is the same as with your unit tests. You can run them locally, you can run them on CI.
And usually you run both of those things.
Yeah. CI is automatic and it catches everything, but locally is much faster. Okay. So let's look what we've got in our code. So we have a sample component, which is called slow list because it's slow by design. So it's a simple list of things, of items, and it has a count prop, which says how many items are there on the list. There is no optimization. This is not flat list. This is very slow list that does everything.
This is just a view. It's not even a scroll view. It's just a view with going through the array, mapping the items to.
So for the real application, you wouldn't even see all the.
Yeah, exactly. But this is a good contrived example to see what is happening.
Okay.
So we will have our performance test. This is the first time I'm doing audio description for the code, by the way.
You're doing great.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as you can see or hear, our performance test just for the initial render and the initial side effects that might happen after that render is pretty simple. So we just called inside just test case, we just call measure performance while passing JSX for our component. This is all async because we need to wait for some things to solve. So the test is pretty simple. And the next thing we want to do is we want to gather our baseline performance. To do that, we switch to console and we will use Reassure CLI. So we run it with a baseline flag. And now it will gather performance
for the first time.
That's
why we're using the flag.
Yeah, this is what we will be comparing to. So we've got our performance.
So Maciej, sorry. Thanks for explaining it very well in audio form. Can you bump up the font for YouTube viewers as well so that we can see? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so as you can see, there's a file which is called baseline perf. It's located in .reassure folder, so it's no magic there. And it has this run statistics, like the render durations and render counts for each of the run, mean of that, standard deviation, things like that. So now when we have our initial measurements, so the baseline, we can run Reassure again, but this time in compare or current mode, which if we run it against the same code, the expected result is 0, meaning
it
no
should
change.
be the same.
It should be no change. As you can see here, we have the elegant console output.
So what I can see is that slow list went from 28.4 to 28.6.
Yeah, and this is random noise. So you have that in both milliseconds, and also probably the more important thing is relative change, which is 0.7% increase.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you see something like 0.7 or up to 2 or 3 or even 5, depending on the stability of your machine, that's probably a noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is what Reassure in this performance output categorizes as a meaningless change. It assumes that if the change is such low, below those few percents, it's probably irrelevant and it's not something to be concerned.
Okay, so for podcast listeners, what I see on the screen right now are several icons. Some are green, some are grayish. I would say.
That's the elegant output.
So that's
Emoji.
your test is running fine. I would probably see some red down the road when the test is not performing so well.
Yeah. Let's do some changes. Actually, I've got changes in the good direction. So it's green.
In good direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're doing the positive
Even more green.
improvement. Yeah.
Let's go.
So we won't touch this test again. So what we'll be doing, we'll be modifying our
Slow
component.
list.
Yeah. So slow list is doing mapping over number of items, and each item receives a key property and also a title, which is item 1, item 2, etc. So, and we have this list item, slow list item component, which has this, let's say, bad pattern of using derived state. So what we have here is we receive title prop, and we have derived state, which is called title uppercase, and we have use effect that is dependent on title prop that will set title uppercase, well, to title prop, then transform to uppercase. So this will cause a re-render, which is a bad pattern and is quite contrived, but I've seen similar things in many applications, but the components are much larger and the things are more hard to spot.
Usually more complicated.
Yeah, so here it's obvious, but normally these things are a bit harder to spot. So what we'll do here is we'll get rid of that. Let's do this way. But we want to keep the behavior, so we will call to uppercase directly on our prop. So we will bypass this derived state thing, and we will run our tests again. So
It is running right now.
yeah, it is running. It takes some time because of repetitions.
More green on the screen.
Yeah, so we can notice a couple of details. So first of all, let's focus on the slow list. So it was reduced from 28 milliseconds to 15 milliseconds. So that's a 13 milliseconds improvement, or in relative terms, it's around 46%. So we gave you like 2 green circles that
Like
indicate this is
very
good.
Yeah, it's like a badge of honor. You did well.
Yeah, so it's to like and the changes went from meaningful section to the significant. So we are running not simple like percent comparison. If it's less than 5, then it's not significant. We have actually some statistical tests that use then things like standard deviation, number of runs to actually calculate whether it's statistically significant.
All the sexy statistic stuff.
Yeah, we're doing maths here.
Yeah. Okay, and we also have this second section. So this is render count.
So kids,
learn statistics.
if you ever think, why do I need this knowledge from math school? This is the case. Like this is the one case. You're probably gonna copy paste from other repo or Stack Overflow, but still.
At least you will be knowing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, and we also, besides render duration, we also have this second section, which is displaying render counts. So we went from 2 renders to just 1 render, and it makes sense because we got this derived state, which was triggered in a use effect. Now we don't have it, so we only have 1 render, and we also noticed that it's like 50% reduction in render count. Wow.
Awesome.
Okay, so we've improved that, and we also have this second component I didn't talk about yet. So it's called Async Component. Seems like it must be using slow list because it also improved its performance, not by 46%, but by 20%. So there's probably
only more. 1 green circle.
Yeah,
only one.
It's still good.
Still good. Okay, so let's look at that second component. So we have something called Async Component. It has a simple state of count, which is gathering numbers. So it starts with 0. And in the UI section, we have a button, which is titled action. When we press the button, what we will do is we will increase the count by 1, but not in a simple manner like synchronously, but we will do it in a set timeout. So we will delay it. This is like you frequently use set timeout in your integration test to simulate things like waiting for network call or reading from async storage and things like that. So the funny thing, or maybe interesting thing here, is that whether you specified 50 milliseconds timeout as we did, or 2 seconds or whatever, that doesn't affect your render duration, because the render duration is just the rendering part and not waiting for stuff. But it will affect the duration of your test because the test will still have to wait for it. So we choose small number. Okay, so what happens when you press the button is that the count label increases. We also see that we are also rendering slow list. It's a kind of dead weight, something to make the component run slower. But it's not dependent on that state. Okay, and we also have our test case. Now we have some more meaningful tests. So we use the same measure performance to render our JSX component, but we now pass an additional option, which is called scenario.
Yeah, can you bump up the font here as well?
Yeah, sure. Maybe too
Sorry,
much.
I'm old and my
I have the same
site
problems.
is not as good.
Accessibility is important.
Yeah. So we have this scenario function, which generally looks the same as your integration test body. So you find a button on the screen, which is called action. You trigger a press event by using fire event, and then you wait for something to happen. We have to use find by, which is like waiting for things to happen, because we have that set timeout with 50 millisecond delay. So we cannot synchronously ask for new value, but we need to wait for it. And then we press it like 2 more times just to make it more like complex.
Make it count.
Yeah, make it count.
Another good joke by Michał.
Okay, so now we will try to optimize that component. One thing that we might do at the moment is we can, knowing that we have some improvements already gathered, we can generate a new baseline so that we are aware of the like incremental improvements.
Sorry, so when you run Yarn Reassure right now, it will still compare to the baseline. It won't compare to the test that you just did. Can you press enter right now? Can we see, we will see the same results, right?
Yeah, roughly the same results. There's some random noise. And
another grade to green circles.
Yeah, we didn't change anything. So it's slightly different. It's like 45 and there was 46.
Like you said, noise.
Yeah, small changes. Okay, so now we will generate a new baseline so that any changes from now on we will compare to what we've already got. So we need to wait our 10 seconds. Yeah, so we got new baseline. Generating baseline generally doesn't trigger like comparison. It's just starting your new baseline. Okay, so now we will go to our component, and we see that beside the button and the state, we also like rendering this list. So let's apply some kind of memoization here to improve the performance. One type of memoization, we could wrap slow list in React memo, but also we can do other thing, use memo to locally generate that value. So let's call it slow list, and we will use React.use memo to generate that same JSX. And then we don't actually have dependencies, so we'll pass an empty array. One thing to notice, if you're not full aware how React rendering works, so this slow list is a React element, and it will have the same identity over every render. And the way the React diffing process works is if it receives the very same object, meaning the same object identity, it will know it can reuse the old render result, speeding things up.
Although there is no warranty.
There is no warranty, but it works.
So.
It's usually working fine. Okay, so we've done our memoization. So now let's compare it against our new baseline.
Yay.
Yay.
Is it even better?
Yeah, it's even better.
Okay.
Incremental improvements.
I like this episode.
Yeah.
We are showing some real improvements here.
So what you can see on your screen is now in the significant changes, we only have our async component. And we've got pretty huge improvements. We reduce render duration by almost 70%.
Yeah, that's what I call a race.
Yeah. So, and in the meaningless section, we got our slow list, basically saying that it's the same, which makes sense because in this change, we didn't touch the slow list. So we've got 2 green circles, meaning that we've done a really good job, but it didn't change the render count. And it also makes sense because we just applied partial memoization.
To the children.
Yeah. So I've shown you how you can run Reassure locally on your machine to verify your findings, to actually diagnose the nitty-gritty details, where to put the memoization and things like that. Reassure is not the right tool. The right tool would be probably DevTools Profiler.
Yeah, or the docs, for one. You go to docs to read about the React performance investigation.
Yeah.
But we're talking the tools, so React DevTools would be one good, or why did you render? There is this package. If you want to track some re-renders that you don't know where or why are happening, although React DevTools also shows some of this information as well.
Yeah. So what you can use also Reassure is that this is what we did for Entain. So for every PR with performance optimization, we also presented the statistics of how much the performance improved with that PR. So you've got that for free if you use Reassure for your effort. Mm-hmm. So this is on your local machine. We have the same on the CI, but in a somewhat nicer format, I might say. So we have our PR and we have a job which is running the performance tests, and the output of that is that performance comparison report. So we have the similar sections. We have significant changes in that particular PR. No significant changes. We have meaningless. Oh, and we also have other sections we didn't mention yet, which are pretty interesting. So we also notice any kind of test where the render count changes, even if the duration change doesn't warrant putting it into a significant section, because frequently render counts are kind of things you want to keep close track of. And we also have new scenarios, which will be added to added scenarios sections.
Okay, so if I change my tests, it will pop up here that I added some scenario.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and it will work like this, that this PR will also introduce a new scenario. So it's not possible to run that in the the baseline branch of the code because it's not there. Also, there is a remove scenario sections in case of some scenario was removed and it's no longer relevant. And each section presents the data in a similar way. So we have the name of the test, we have the render duration. Similarly, we have previous value, new value, relative change, and also in person.
The same info but human readable.
Yeah,
the previous one was console. We know that people are afraid of console, people that are not developers, but people who you want to actually show the results, you give them the nice MD file here to read.
Yeah, and this is by far our favorite way of using Reassure because it gives you this feedback on every pull request. So it's like a code review buddy that gives you those hints that hey, this looks like there's some.
It's a code review buddy that actually is aware of performance.
Yeah, so actually I could imagine. I could imagine that I'm not reviewing your PR until this test shows me that you did not introduce any regressions. And if you did, I'm not reviewing this. Go back to your code and check why this render counts increased.
Wait for this stuff to do the thing.
Yeah, actually, it's similar to your regular tests. You are not probably reviewing stuff until
which failed. Passed. Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
Okay, and I want to show you one trick. We also can give you more detailed information. So there is this show details section under. When we have entries, it also appearing. What we have here is we have the same test, but in a much more detailed way. So we have, for example, Async Component, we have baseline. So we can see what is the mean We can see what is the standard deviation.
We should call it nerd stats.
Stat, yeah.
YouTube has those.
Yep.
You can. Sorry,
There's
nerding out about nerd stats.
Another Hacktoberfest PR suggestion.
Yeah.
And we have like results of particular runs, which are sorted in the descending order. So we see that like we had these 10 runs and these are the results. And we also have similar stats for current. And on the render count column, we have also things for render
Sorry,
count.
I didn't pick it up when you first said it, but when I run this test on each PR, it will actually run the baseline test again. It won't take the results from the previous run.
So the thing that we didn't mention is that on the CI you don't run with the baseline flag. This is for running locally, so you know that you're not
actually
regressing.
run when we run gather the baseline. Okay, so let me explain why we're
one
running
time.
baseline on CI. So
Yeah.
you want to compare apples to apples. So if you have old baseline from like say a week ago, it might be run on a different agent, and the agent might be like faster or slower.
Understood. Yeah.
So to get more reliable results, we run it one after another. So we are certain that they run on the same agent.
Yeah. The conditions are similar then. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Understand.
Okay. So, and part of running on a CI is also a CI script, which like orchestrates what we are doing. So, and this is a very simple one actually. So let me open our sample script.
Oh, there is the baseline flag. I forgot about
Yeah.
it.
So what we're doing here is that this is run after your GitHub action or whatever CI you're using actually checked out the code, run installing packages, etc. So the first thing, and this is just a suggestion, you can do it also in other ways, but it's a pretty reasonable baseline. So we start with checking out a baseline branch, which will default to main in our script, and we'll run reassure baseline. Then we'll go back to the current branch, run it again, and these are the two same comments I was using when showing you on my local machine. So now it's running on a CI, and this will generate the output files, and not only like a console output, but we also have JSON file with data that is in a machine-friendly format, and we also generate Markdown, which is displayed, this neat report displayed in GitHub.
Awesome. That's like, I'm speechless. I'm so happy that I didn't look into the details, and I was lying. I saw the presentation by Michał, but it wasn't as informative. It wasn't as in detail.
Thank you.
Yeah. Maciej did a much better job of talking to a developer. Right now, I know that I do want to use it, and I do want to have my clients sign on to actually integrating this kind of performance measuring tool. It is awesome. Joining.
Thank you.
This amazing
Thank you for
session.
hosting us.
Yeah. Like, you're welcome. I was Łukasz. I am still Łukasz. This is the React Native Show podcast, when we talk about the newest and greatest in React and React Native development. With me today, Maciej and Michał. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.